In this video, we're going to learn how to write the exact equation of a quadratic given a situation or a graph. To help us, we're going to use the concept of Angry Birds. So if you've ever played the game Angry Birds, you know that you launch the bird back and you're trying to hit the little pigs. And if you'll notice, the path of the Angry Bird forms a quadratic. So we're going to use this concept to help us to understand how we write the exact equations of a quadratic. So here's our first example. You can see our graph here. It says the bird starts at 0, 0, that's where it's launched, and hits the bird at 8, 0. It also reaches a height of 16. So to help us get started, we're going to be using the vertex form of a quadratic to help us. What we need to do is to be able to identify the vertex of our parabola. So here's our vertex. We know that the bird traveled from 0 and it landed at 8. So the halfway point between 0 and 8, which is where our vertex is going to be 4. So we use that horizontal distance that it travels and we cut it in half. And then we also know that it reaches a height of 16. So the highest point of the graph is going to be 16. So after finding the vertex, what I can do is I can plug in my vertex into the equation. So I take the 4 and the 16 and I plug that in for h and k. My goal for this problem is I want to be able to solve for a. And in order to be able to do that, I need to figure out something to plug in for x and y. We know that the bird started at 0, 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that point and plug that in for x and y in order to be able to solve for a. I could also use the point 8, 0 because I know that that's another point that is on the graph. So pretty much you can use any point that you would like except for the vertex. So we cannot use the vertex for this. I'm going to use 0, 0 just because I think that that's going to be easiest. So what I do is I plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify my equation. What I want you guys to do when you are solving these is before you do any squaring, I want you to go ahead and move the 16 over because we don't want to accidentally combine anything together. So I'm going to get negative 16 equals a times negative 4 squared. Negative 4 squared is 16. So what I'm going to do in order to solve for a is I'm going to divide by 16 on both sides. So negative 16 divided by positive 16 is negative 1. So that's my a value. Now in order to fully answer the question, what I need to do is rewrite my equation with my new a value. So y equals negative 1, x minus 4 squared plus 16. And this is the exact equation of this path right up here. So I can be certain because I took the points that I was given in order to create this equation. Now this was a very nice a value. Sometimes we don't always get the nicest a values. So let's go ahead and take a look at another example. So now our Angry Bird is launched at negative 1 and it hits the bird at 7, 0. We also know that it reaches a maximum height of 8. So the first thing, remember, we're going to use our vertex form equation. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to identify my vertex, which is this point, the highest point right up here. So if I take a look, we're looking for the middle between -1 and 7, which happens to be 3. And we know that the maximum height is 8. So the reason why I got 3 is I took -1 plus 7 and I divide by 2. -1 plus 7 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. So what you're doing is you're averaging the x-intercepts, and that's how you find the first part, the middle part of your vertex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that vertex into my equation. Now again, my goal for this problem is to be able to solve for A. In order to do that, what I need to do is use one of the points that are on the graph that's not the vertex. So I could use -1, 0, or I could use 7, 0. I'm going to use 7, 0 for this one. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y and 7 for x. So if I simplify, 7 minus 3 is 4, plus 8. And remember, I told you the first thing that you should do is move the 8 over before you do any squaring or anything, because you don't want to accidentally combine something. So we have -8 equals A times 16, because 4 squared is 16. And I'm going to divide by 16 on both sides because I want to get A by itself. So -8 over 16, that happens to be 0.5, but we actually want to leave this as a decimal, or as a fraction. So I'm going to write it as -1/2. So you want to reduce your fraction. Our A value should be a fraction because remember, this is our stretch and compression factor. So the final part of this problem is to go ahead and write the exact equation with the new A value. So that equation right there, y equals -1/2 x minus 3 squared plus 8, is the exact path that that bird traveled. Let's look at one more example. The bird travels a horizontal distance of 12 feet. It reaches a maximum height of 13 feet. So in this problem, we don't actually have the picture to go off of. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to draw our own picture. So I know that the bird is launched and it's going to land 12 feet away from where it was launched. And I also know that the maximum height that the bird hits is 13. So what I need to do is to be able to find my vertex. So remember, my vertex is right here. So it's halfway in between the starting point and the landing point. So halfway between 0 and 12 is 6. And then I know the highest point that it reached was 13. So now that I know my vertex, I can go ahead and plug it in to my vertex form equation, which we have right here. So y equals A x minus 6 squared plus 13. Now it doesn't really tell me a starting point here. It just tells us that it traveled a horizontal distance of 12 feet. When it doesn't give you a starting point, you can assume that your graph started at 0, 0. And so that's the point that I'm going to use in order to help myself solve for A. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y and 0 for x. So 0 minus 6 is negative 6. And remember, I told you to move that last number over first so that we don't accidentally combine something. Negative 6 squared is positive 36. So in order to solve for A, what I'm going to do is divide by 36 on both sides. Now, negative 13 over 36 cannot be reduced. There's no number that I can divide both of those by. So my A value is just negative 13 over 36. Remember, you want to write it as a fraction. So my equation is y equals negative 13 over 36, x minus 6 squared plus 13. And that's the exact equation the bird traveled in order to hit the pig. So you can apply this to many other situations. As long as you're able to find the vertex of the quadratic or parabola, and then you can take one of the points, you are able to find the exact equation. Thank you so much for watching.